Hi everyone, this is the GateDen.com and we are here at Phoenix Comic Con with Freddie Williams II, comic artist extraordinaire, and guy who says that he is more popular than Jim Lee. Is that right, Freddie?
No, the opposite of that.
Oh, that's unfortunate. Lies. He's very modest.
Yeah, Jim Lee's my favorite artist, and he's my boss, so it would be suicidal for me.
That might be bad. So, Freddie, who are you and how did you get your start in this wonderful industry?
I am Freddie E. Williams II, and let's see, I currently draw for DC Comics. I've drawn for them exclusively for about 6 years, 7 years in October, and I'm best known for, I did a couple-year run on Robin, did about a year of The Flash. I am currently working on Captain Atom from the DC New 52 that started in September of 2011.
I hope they just don't keep changing the writers on that over and over again.
Yeah, I mean, with Captain Atom, it's been the same creative team. It's been me and JT Cool for the entire year, so far. So
that's awesome.
But I'm probably best known for writing the DC Comics Guide to Digitally Drawing Comics,
really?
Which came out in 2009, and this is part of the cover of the book.
That is so cool.
Thanks.
And what was the first book that you did? What was the thing that? Yeah, the first thing that you did in the comics, and the first thing you could say, published, done, and done.
The very first thing I will never tell the title of because it was so abysmally bad that I don't want anyone to see it.
See, now that just makes us want to know the title more.
Good. But
that's why we go to comics.org.
Yeah. But the first thing that I got published at DC was I finished up Seven Soldiers, Mr. Miracle. I did about 10 pages, I guess, of issue 2, and then I did all of issues 3 and 4.
And what was your first ongoing?
My first ongoing was Robin, and that was right after I finished Seven Soldiers, Mr. Miracle. My editor at the time, Peter Tomasi, who's now a wonderful writer, but at the time...
You were on Green Lantern, right?
Yes, yeah, and he's doing Batman and Robin, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
He was a senior editor at DC at the time, and he had hired me to do the Seven Soldiers, Mr. Miracle. I had finished up at the very end of Seven Soldiers, Mr. Miracle issue 4. There's some youthful characters in there, and I had just turned in those pages, coincidentally at the same time that he was looking for somebody to take over Robin. So he called me right after I turned in those pages, had me do a tryout. He really liked it, and then I got that gig. So
now you actually finished a commission here right now. Do you think we could take a look at that?
Oh, sure, yeah. This is a little atypical for, this is Captain Atom, but I generally render him in a gray wash, but they specifically wanted to see how I would do it in a pen and ink style, so he kind of has a Dr. Manhattan / Human Torch vibe to him.
I guess as a 90s kid, when I saw the hair, I immediately thought Damon Knight.
Thought of it.
The Damon Knight.
Oh, yes, yeah. I was actually thinking Union, if you know what I'm talking about. From early Homage Studios, Wildstorm Studios stuff. I oftentimes think of, whenever I do a wispy hair, I oftentimes think of, there's a couple drawings that Travis Charest did of Union, and he had this really smoky sort of coif of hair on the top of his head, and I'm always channeling that from my past.
Yeah, it's so funny. Like, people make fun of Image and as a company in the 90s, but really, you look at the comic art style, you look at the influence that they had. It was, say what you want, bad or good, but they were as massively influential as any comic book style.
I agree, and I think in the last 5 years we've seen a real resurgence of that in both DC and Marvel, and if you look at the new DC 52, the Image influence can be felt throughout probably 90% of the line of much more rendering that looks like it's Image inspired, and I think that's a great thing. Same thing over at Marvel as well. It's
that kind of heavy detail that I like a lot of the artists like Mike Allred, etc. But it's a really heavy detail that for a while, in like the late 90s, early 2000s, they were just backing away from. It was almost like they were afraid to say, we're comic books. They're just trying so hard not to.
I think that's inferring, it's possible some people were afraid to say that they were comic books, but I think more specifically there was a distancing of, when Image first came out, they were incredibly hot, incredibly popular, and then they had a bit of a stigma for there were some late books, books that were solicited that never came out, and then also the style over substance stigma that befell some of the titles that came out of Image. And
I like how we say some.
What's that?
I like how we say some.
Yes, some.
Yes.
And then at the same time, there was also the advent of popularization of digital coloring.
Yeah.
And I know from internal conversations I've had with people, within the comic industry, that sometimes it can be looked at as if you have fully rendered, fully formed, fully modeled, computer-generated colors, the need for a lot of hatching or cross-hatching might not be as needed, because you have less of a need to create a roundness or a depth with that hatching. So that's one of the reasons that it backed off, that and the popularization of manga coming into the U.S. So I wouldn't say that it was because of a fear to be traditional or a fear to necessarily distance themselves entirely. It wasn't all based on that. There were several coalescing factors that made people back off a little bit in that window.
Yeah. It's funny. I never really thought of it that way. I never really looked at the. But it is. I never really looked at it like that. But it's kind of true. I mean, you look at someone like Joe Madureira.
Yeah.
And he's an amazing artist, but he almost kind of started that kind of manga influence in comics, and it really spread because of how big he was doing. Sure, the other artists were putting their work out a little more regularly, but he really did.
Yeah, I would trace it back. I agree with you that he was one of the first popular guys back on X-Men. I would trace it back further to J. Scott Campbell, who preceded Joe Mad, and then even further back from that with the let me see, the large American acceptance of the Akira comic book.
Oh yeah, that was huge.
It was obviously, it was manga. It wasn't real typical, but it was very popular, and it had computer coloring as well by Steve Oliff. Oleoptics was the name of his studio. So, but I agree with you. There was that nice change of pace that had a little bit of Arthur Adams whimsy kind of mixed into it. It became very popular, and I think rightfully so, because somebody like Arthur Adams, Joe Mad, or J. Scott Campbell can run the gamut from being very expressive and kind of jovial, all the way to being serious and dark when needed. So that's a great style cross section to have.
Because you look at the early Joe Mad work, there's easily a massive influence from Art Adams.
Hugely, yes.
Yeah. And what kind of advice would you give to anyone wanting to get in the comic field, especially young people trying to get in the comic book field right now?
Let's see, I would think above all else there's the need to be very persistent and to be dedicated, meaning there's going to be a lot of false starts, there's going to be a lot of frustration, that it takes a long time to get to know the type of artwork, to get to understand the dynamics of storytelling, the dynamics of anatomy, and creating dynamic figures and that sort of thing. And it can be years and years of stumbling blocks, but it's necessary. Do a lot of studying from a book called How to Draw Comics the Marvel Way. Look at your favorite comic book artists, but don't solely look at them. Also look at life drawing. Observe people even when you're like at a family gathering or at a mall. Look at how they're standing, the weight distribution of their body, the way they're talking, and gesturing with their hands. Those are all things that, so observe, be a sponge, and that can all translate to better artwork. Also, I have, my website is freddieart.com. I have a link there to my YouTube page, which are, it's free to watch. I've got a lot of videos on there that answers what people are looking for in portfolios, what kind of art supplies that they can use, a long list of stuff.
So this is almost like the source for anyone to go to. You would go to, what was that website again?
freddieart.com, and that will give you a link to my YouTube page. And it's not the source, but it's a pretty good one, and I answer a lot of
source.
It's the source. I try to answer a lot of questions because when I was, first of all, I like sharing information, but when I was in high school and trying to get into comics industry, this was pre-internet, and that sparked it was almost like uncovering or unraveling a mystery for me, and so I'm still interested in how others create comics, even though I'm doing it myself, and I like to share and discuss that info.
And before we bring this interview to a close, what would you say is the best website to go to for comics, movies, video games, and everything else? Because we're awesome.
Geekden.com.
www.thegeekden.com. Because nowadays everyone needs that www.
Yeah, because nobody knows to put the www.
No one knows the internet. All right, it was great. It was great having you on, Freddie. Thank you for doing this interview for thegeekden.com. This is Freddie Williams II. This is Robin because he's pretty badass. Thank you again.
Great, thanks.